right now, while we have everyone on the panel, let's dive straight into some Dungeons and Dragons. And yes, Dungeons and Dragons. I thought I messed that title up because I was thinking of the Swedish version. Again, I Sweden on my mind today. But anyway, yes, Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and
Movie
Dragons.
officially came out today. Culture and myself, I know, have seen it. We will be getting into our spoiler-free thoughts on it before long here. But before that, not everyone wanted to see it. I mean, there's quite a few people that have it in for the corporate owners, Wizard of the Coast, and many also have issues with some of the early press surrounding the movie, like the director stating how much he enjoyed emasculating the male leads. We will get into all of that. But someone else who didn't want to see it is, of course, James Eatock. James, why did you not want to see it, considering that you're obviously a fan of the 80s animated series, which honestly everyone wanted to see instead? Can you just tell us very briefly about that animated series and why you didn't want to see this movie?
Well, I saw the trailer and I was like, not my cup of tea. I remember back in when did the other movie come out? Was that the one with Jeremy Irons? Was that 2000?
2000, yeah.
2001.
Yeah, 2001. I remember when that came out, and even when you heard about the news about they're doing a Dungeons and Dragons movie, my friends and I were all like, "Oh, we're gonna, they're gonna do the cartoon." And reality, it's like, no, they're gonna take the property, they're gonna make their own version, which they did. And I don't remember much about that film. I think I saw it, but we were talking 20-some years ago. I saw the trailer for this one, and I like Chris Pine, but I was just like, I'm not really feeling this. It just felt like and not to sound like a grumpy old gentleman, but it just looks like a Marvel movie, and I'm growing sick and tired of that kind of. It's almost like we can't even take the story we're telling seriously. I don't know. I may be completely wrong. The film may be fantastic, although I saw one person say the film is great. It's mindless action and adventure, and it's like, oh, so you want that in your life? So I don't know. Maybe I'm coming at it with the wrong mindset, but yeah, I grew up with the animated series. I was never this might be saying something bad, but I was never a fan of the board game. I remember my friend was huge into Dungeons and Dragons, the role playing game, and he tried to get me to play it, and I was just like, I don't get it. These 100-sided dice. I was like, what do you do with this? It was crazy, all these different things, and hit points, and it was, I had a good imagination, but I was like, I don't really like this. But the thing that caught my eye as a youngster with Dungeons and Dragons was the animated series. Produced by Marvel Productions. It was they took, I guess it was one of the first visual interpretations of Dungeons and Dragons. And they did such a good job that you had some of the great writers from back in the day. Michael Reeves, who only recently passed away. Paul Dini worked on the show. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting a bunch, but there was a lot of great writers worked on the original Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, and they all took it seriously. I saw someone trying to compare the new film, saying, "Oh, it's not a parody. It's fun. It's supposed to be like not take itself too seriously, like the cartoon." It's like the cartoon took itself seriously. Just because it's a cartoon, don't think it's dumbed down. You had a bunch of. That's always my thing with 80s cartoons. People think, "Oh, it's an 80s."
James, yes, people do the same thing with He-Man all the time. I'm sure you know that.
It's for kids, therefore it's dumbed down. And it's like, you do realize the people working on these shows were influenced by some of the great fantasy and sci-fi writers of the decades past. So you had your Straczynskis, the Tilios, again Michael Reeves, Paul Dini, all these great writers that were using what they'd grew up reading to put it into practice and work on these cartoons. Yeah, they had I guess boxes to tick with regards to He-Man and Transformers and Dungeons and Dragons, but for the most part, I'd say 99% of the time they were trying to make a cartoon or a script that appealed to them. Why would they write down to children unless you're making a cartoon specifically for children, like very young kids? But Dungeons and Dragons took itself way seriously. It's so funny. When I was talking to someone recently about it, and I said, there's one episode that starts off with the kids nearly getting back home, and the portal is closed. Like Venger stops them, blocks their path, and the kids are all they're all despondent. There's this moment where it's just them all sitting with their backs to one another, and it's so like it sends chills up your spine watching it. And it's, you know, the Dungeons and Dragons animated series had a great voice cast. one of the best being Donnie Most from you know, Ralph Mal from Happy Days. It's like, how is he that good a voice actor? But yeah, it was such a, the show took itself very seriously, and it had those kind of 80s, you know, I guess I would say cliches of, you know, we don't want to kill the villain off because obviously we need to make more episodes. But I don't know, it's weird. So I'm always hoping for that Dungeons and Dragons animated series to be put on the big screen. Like I say, the animated series had a bunch of great people working on it that took it very seriously. And like one of the character designers was Bob Klein, who is like a legend in 1980s animation, worked on so much stuff that we grew up with. And it's funny, you know, someone said, oh, I remember seeing a screen capture. Someone sent me and said, oh, the kids from the cartoon show up in the new movie. And I was like, okay, right, okay, it's good. And I thought, are they just going to be killed as like a sight gag? Like, do you remember those?
You
remember
and
those
everybody
things
else did, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, because also the shot was like a wide shot, and I thought, oh, they're gonna off them inside, and that's me being very cynical.
Like a big boulder land on them, or they
yeah, like big, like they're in an
arena.
arena.
Exactly what happens with them.
I just thought like they. Okay.
Yeah, but so this movie then, suffice to say, you weren't too interested in seeing it.
No, like I don't, yeah, like I say, I'm not like stuck in the past or anything, but it was just the case of, you see that animated series and the possibilities, what you can do with these characters like earthlings in another realm, and you can play it for like gags every once in a while, but play it seriously. If you can never take the actual premise seriously, then you can't expect the audience to take any of the threats they encounter or anything seriously. And like I say, when I saw that image, I was like, oh, because for anybody watching, a few years ago, I hope I don't get it was either a Spanish country, it was somewhere in Europe.
It was Brazil.
It was Brazil. Was it Brazil? They made.
I'm pretty sure it was Brazil.
I think you're probably right. And they made an advert, a car advert, and they featured the characters from Dungeons and Dragons. And you think, a car advert featuring the characters from Dungeons and Dragons? Like, what? Okay, weird connection. But they did one of the most amazing jobs of bringing 80s cartoon character designs to the small screen. And it was just incredible, because you're like, well, are these designs of Dungeons and Dragons going to translate? This advert was some of the best casting you've ever seen. Granted, they may not be actors. I'm sure they probably are budding actors. But like, for example, like the guy they cast for Eric looked like Eric. It was just, it was one of the most amazing, like, there was this car. Yeah, this is the advert. It's so good. It's like, like they look like the characters. And yeah, the budget for this probably wasn't, you know, hundreds of millions or something like that. It was probably far cheaper. But they, you know, they've got the characters there, the designs and everything, and it's taking itself seriously. Like I say, like, you know, special effects are what they are, but it's still bloody good. And then you see the designs of the cameo they make in the movie, and it's just like, oh wow. And there's the clip where they show, in this new movie, they show them running around the maze, and you see the cars. It's just like, oh, you know, I know they're not the focal point of this story, but you think, like, if you're gonna, you know, do a callback to the 80s cartoon, at least do it with some kind of, you know, understanding of what these characters look like. Because they show a close-up of Bobby the Barbarian. Looks like a 50-year-old guy. Like, there's anything wrong with a 50-year-old guy, but he's supposed to be a child. You can make the excuse, well, maybe they've been there so long he's aged, and it's like, I don't quite buy that either. It's just, Dungeons and Dragons, it's, I don't know, maybe I am just wanting to always see the animated version on the big screen because I see the potential it has.
Well, James, I remember when the early 2000s one came out, that was what everybody's complaint was then, was why don't we just get the animated characters? And if I remember, the excuse then was they had to pay for them if they wanted them, because I believe it's Deke or whoever that owns them.
It's Deke, the animated. It's like Marvel production, like their animated wing, and I think they were taken over by Deke.
I was going to say, for a while, I know for a fact Disney owned Dungeons and Dragons, because it was shown on Disney in like the late 90s, early noughties, like on one of the Disney channels.
Well, and that's probably because they took care of all of Marvel's animation.
Yeah, that would be why. But yeah, before we get into to culture and my review of the movie, since we've actually seen it, I just want to hear from the rest of the panel here. Who here is interested in seeing the movie and who isn't, and if so, why? Mr. Chato, let's begin with you.
I'm actually interested in seeing the movie if it's kind of funny bad in kind of a showgirls kind of way.
Oh, well, that's why I wanted to see it. That's why I was positive. Because
But I don't want to put up with. I mean, I'm trying to think. Wasn't going to go see Ant-Man because it was completely wrong for an Ant-Man. Because I like Ant-Man as a comic book character, and I like the first movie. So I thought, wow, Quantum Mania was going to be more than hate watch. That was just, I have better use of my time. But Dungeons and Dragons, because I like a lot of the actors in it, and poor Hugh Grant. I mean, he was replacing the other Brit from the 2001
Irons.
Yeah, Irons, who really did chew up the scenery, chew up the bad 3D background. In the original movie, and I just felt bad for Hugh Grant, which was worth seeing the movie on its own. So,
yeah,
sounds like his career is behind him. I'd like to see him in something. But anyway, so yeah, I'm interested in watching it because it feels like such an anomaly.
Script, how about you? Is this a movie that you want to see or made a decision not to see?
No, I was interested in seeing it because I do have a number of friends that are into Dungeons and Dragons, the role-playing stuff, not so much the cartoon, and they're very excited to see it. And I think that has to be a consideration to something to take into consideration, because even though Dungeons and Dragons does have a cartoon itself, it's a property that's based off of the Gary Gygax books, and the cartoon itself does have a certain set of degrees of separations from the Gary Gygax stuff, is my understanding. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what their take is on this, because it's already been heavily advertised that, yes, this is Dungeons and Dragons, but it is definitely not the cartoon. I mean, that's the same type of advertising method that they had with the one in the early 2000s. And I remember it kind of vividly because I have a number of friends who were colleagues of that director before I entered in the entertainment industry. So I got a couple of early sightings there, because I got to meet like Justin Whalen and a couple of other character actors that were in there. Never met Jeremy Irons or the other Wayans kid that was in there. But
I believe it was Marlon.
Sure. But yeah, so I'm interested to see it. Going to try and see if we can get tickets tonight with those guys and check it out and get their thoughts on it.
That would be fun to do it with the guys.
Yeah.
I want to see it just because Valkyrie is in it.
I don't think that's Valkyrie. That's Michelle Rodriguez. She's from the Fast and Furious franchise.
Oh, I thought it was Valkyrie.
No, it's
just the same
chick
hair.
who plays the same tough chick in every movie.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was the same actress.
Same emotional range on screen.
Look the same. Uh-oh.
It's the actress who's made a career out of playing the character from Aliens, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
What's her name? Vasquez.
Michelle Rodriguez.
No, I know. I meant the character from Aliens.
Oh,
so like,
yeah.
Right. Oh, her.
Yeah, she's basically been mimicking
Goldstein.
her entire career, basically.
Yeah, she who was completely different in Terminator 2, like completely unrecognizable. Yeah.
Well, Vasquez was played by a good Jewish actress.
Yes, she was.
That'll never happen again.
Tom, before we move on to the culture mind review, how about you? Is this something that you would be interested in seeing, or has the Wizards of the Coast turned you off too much?
I did want to see it. Six actually tried to help me find one of the early screenings, but it got sold out before I even got a chance to get to it.
No.
And we were looking all week, so it must have sold out pretty quick. So I'm interested to see how the box office plays out this weekend. Do I want to see it? Frankly, I was just going to go see it because I had a chance to maybe go see it early. At this point, considering how fast everything's coming to streaming, I don't rush anymore, especially the crap I have to deal with to go see it. Creed's already on video on demand. The movie's only been out for like 3 weeks. Yeah.
Bloody
So
hell.
I'm like, a good thing I didn't waste my time going to see that. Not that I would have anyway because of Sylvester Stallone not being in it. But anyhow, no, instead of going to see it last night, instead I watched All Quiet on the Western Front and I watched Tetris instead. So chances of me seeing this before it comes out on video on demand are very slim. And that being said, I'm hoping the people that did see it liked it.
Yeah. Culture, you did see it. Before we get your review, let's hear your perceptions. What were your expectations going in? case
Actually,
that followed your experience.
Yeah, as the film, was advertised, and of course all the press coming out about it, my expectations were low. I think unfortunately my permanent position going into films, at least for now, is set the bar low so that try to make it so it's not as disappointing as it likely will be. And so with that, I expected very little from this film. I expected every single trope that was being advertised as being delivered to be delivered, and I expected diverse casting that might be somewhat nonsensical, which it's just something that's going to be there. I expected a couple of plays on the tropes that they like to do with characters, such as bad dad and other things similar to that. I expected overly corny dialogue in inappropriate places, and what I expected was a marginal film that they spent too much money on. That's what I expected going in. So I think I said as much too.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Andre,
those were
what about
your
you?
expectations. Did you find that the movie delivered on those expectations? And what were your general impressions of the movie itself?
Here's a really cool thing. Normally my default to say something nice about a film was it was in focus. And in this case, what I would like to say is that the CGI was wonderful. Beyond my expectations.
Because Victoria Alonso wasn't there.
Exactly. And that's what my comparison is versus the MCU now, where they spend extraordinary amounts of money giving, just very blurry effects. There was only one visual effects element that pulled me out of the believability of something. I will tell you, what you've seen in the trailer with the owl bear, very impressive. Really visually that is really well done. All of the monster effects were beautiful. It's very, I said the same thing about the recent Shazam 2 film, right? They deliver much better on these monster effects in these films than MCU does now. So that's a.
Did you know who the SFX house was?
No, somebody asked me that the other day. I have no clue. But when I like you said, I mean that's an improvement over the other things that we've seen. And this film cost at least $50 million less than any MCU film. I mean, it was only $150 million budget. E1 is spending a lot of money on these things, trying to get somebody to acquire them. So they really wanted this film to be visually impressive. I found that my expectations were met as far as the casting. I've decided that I'm not looking for ghosts. I'm not finding ghosts. They're not ghosts. They actually are in there. So when it comes to the casting, it lived up to my expectations exactly. The role swapping, I will say, between men and women is very prevalent in this film.
We'll get back into that in a moment here, because I'm sure many will have questions about that particular aspect. Yeah. But general impression, like your brief verdict of the movie, worthwhile or not so much?
Yeah, I found this to be a mid-level film. It's a B movie with high-end effects. It's not nearly as enjoyable as Megan has been or this year. It is slightly below what Shazam delivered. A lot of people will find this fun if you can, turn off your brain to things. But I put it right in the mid-range. I gave it in if you're looking for a scale, I gave it a 4 of 10 or a 2 of 5. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that your review is a very fair one. Unlike you, I looked at the trailer and I saw right away that, okay, this is going to be a dumb, fun movie. This is going to be a somewhat satirical take. I don't have like any strong affection to the Dungeons and Dragons brand outside of that 80s cartoons and the general aesthetics. I would have liked the movie to play more homage to those 80s beautiful painted aesthetics, similar to what we see behind James there. But still, I thought it looked like, okay, this looks like fun. It's obviously not going to be the movie I would have liked, but it could be fun nonetheless. So I was like excited for it. I was a little bit concerned with the comments from the directors about how much they enjoyed emasculating male leads. This whole Wizards of the Coasts thing not being like a gamer or card game player, whatever you would refer to a player of Dungeons and Dragons to be myself. That's like a name that is out there, and we've covered some of it here, but I don't really get it. So that doesn't really mean much to me. So I went in with the movie just expecting some dumb fun. And for a good half hour while watching it, I seriously contemplated just walking out. I never do that in movies. Like when I buy a ticket for a movie, I sit there throughout. This time I was like, do I really want to subject myself to this? Because the first half I thought was so incredibly bad, so distracting with the wokeness and the gender roles and everything that we'll get to here. But then at a certain point it picked up. And I thought that the writing was actually pretty clever. The only thing that I really disliked is that it needed one rewrite to remove the wokeness. And script, you could have fixed this movie in one rewrite. It would be so easy. You don't have to change anything about the structure of the story at all. It's just the surface level wokeness. That's the only thing that had to be removed, and it was so easily removable. But the presence of it, I agree, that takes this down from a 7 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10. So yeah, clever script. There are some funny moments, distracting modern dialogue, there's some distracting modern visuals, some like these characters, they don't fit in like a sword and sorcery setting at all, with the clothes and everything like that. And this like appearance of the 80s cartoon, oh my god, yeah, it would have been better if they hadn't.
So is the tone a little off kilter, kind of like the early 2000s movie too, where they just didn't quite take it too seriously, and there's a lot of modernisms kind of in the vernacular of sorts?
Yes. Yeah.
I figured.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let me just add real quick, Tom. There were a few moments where they did use what common parlance would have been within this world. It just, unfortunately, it got mixed in with current vernacular.
Yeah.